Hello everyone, and welcome to the video. If you're coming from the blog post on simple budgeting, welcome. I hope this is helpful to you. If you're just coming from YouTube, I highly recommend you check out the post on contemporarydad.com. It explains the philosophy behind this spreadsheet and why it's so simple and why it's good that it's so simple. So let's get to work. We are on Google Sheets. I'm going to create a blank spreadsheet. If you've never worked with spreadsheets before, they seem intimidating, but they are so useful it's worth learning at least the basics. So all of spreadsheets are made up of these squares or rectangles called cells, and they're divided into columns, which are identified by the alphabet, and rows, which are identified by numbers. If you want to refer to a particular cell, you just refer to the letter first, A, and then the number second, 1. And in these cells you can put data such as text or numbers, and then you can use formulas or other things to do math with them and get information manipulated and provided to you in a very useful way. So for our spreadsheet today, with our simple budget, we will click up here and rename it something like monthly budget, and I'll hit enter. Now we'll set up our budget with a format categorizing each of the types of data that we'll have. So I'll do one column for each of those. I'll start with column A, and you can just double click a cell to enter information into it. We'll call this one bills. Everything below this will be the bill that you're paying. Column B, we'll say this is the amount due, what you have to pay for this period on this bill, and hit enter. It's important to know if the bill was paid already, so I'll put a column for that. And the due date of the bill helps me stay on track during the month. We'll see what is upcoming that I need to pay, that I need to be aware of. So we'll do an example row here under bills. Let's say we're paying the electricity bill. And the electricity bill, before we put in the number, it's good to use formatting. We're dealing with money here, and there's a special formatting rule that can format your cells as currency. I'll show you how that's useful in just a second, but let me first format this cell as currency. I'll click that. And then I can format all of these cells. Let's say I want to do 12 bills that will be paid, so I'll start on B2 and go down 12 more to B14, and I'll apply this formatting to all of these by clicking this small box here at the corner and dragging it down to all 12. And now all of these, when I input numbers, they'll be formatted as currency. And here's what that means. Let's say my electric bill is $75. I type in a 75, but when I hit enter, it doesn't just have the 75, it adds a dollar sign and the cents, and it treats it as money, which is useful to us for our budgeting spreadsheet. Moving on to the next column, the is it paid column. There's only really two things we need to put in here. Was it paid? Yes. Or was it not paid? No. And so a good way to keep track of that is the checkbox. So I'll go up here to insert, and we'll find the checkbox. And you see here the checkbox is unchecked. The value associated with that is false. But if I check it, then the value becomes true. This is a Boolean value if you've ever done any computer science, and that will be very useful to us later. And I'll leave it unchecked for now. For due date, I just put in a number, and that represents the day of the month. You could put in a full date. I like to keep it super simple, and so we'll just say this is due on the 15th of every month. And there's our example line item. Now you can fill out all of these for all of the bills that you have. You could even include things that you want to keep track of and you want to definitely pay, such as savings or a donation to something important. And then those will be kept track of as well, and we'll make sure that those are paid throughout the month. Now, with all of this information, I'll move down to A15 after all of my bills. And now we're going to start doing some math with the data that we have entered. So we'll do totals. I'm going to make this the first half of the month, total. I like to break the month up into two halves. Most people get 2 paychecks a month every 2 weeks, and so I'll just split it up that way to make it a little easier. First half total. Here's how we add that up. We'll go into B15, and up here in the formula section, we're going to use a function to add these numbers together. So to declare a function, I type in equals. The function I want is sum in all capitals. And then in the sum function, we use parentheses to pass in information. So in this one, we want to pass in all the things we want to add together. Now we could pass in all these cells, B2, B3, B4, B5, but it's much faster to use a range, and so I'll show you how to do that. We're going to use starting on B2, then we'll use a colon, which means we're using a range. The range starts on B2, but after the colon is the end of the range, down to B14. So type B14, and we see a helpful little orange box around that area. We have a closed parenthesis, and we'll hit enter, and now that sum is adding all these numbers together. Now, of course, there's only one there, but if I would be to add another one, $25, the total updates to $100. If I modify one of these, only $20, the sum keeps up with it. It keeps adding those numbers together for me and keeps a running total for me. So that's handy. Next, we want to add the amount we've already paid from our bills, and for that, we're going to use these check marks in conjunction with the amounts that we will have paid. So I'll show you how to use that. First, I'm going to copy this check mark down to the rest of the cells, and we can use that handy little box here again and just drag it down to all of our potential bills. And so here's how we figure this out. We use a function that's a little more complicated than the last one. It's called SUMIF. And SUMIF adds things together if certain conditions are met. So we'll pass that in our parentheses. We're going to pass in, first of all, what the condition is based on, or what cells we're looking to determine their condition. And in this case, it's the check boxes. So C2 through C14, that's a range. Then a comma for our next requirement. And what we're looking for is we're going to add them if they're paid. We want to add them to this sum if they are paid. So if I check that, its condition or Boolean value would be true. Another comma. And so here's what we actually want to add together, which is the B column. So we'll use the range B2 through B14. Close parentheses, and we'll hit enter. And so now, no bills are paid at this time, so we have a 0. But if I would pay the electricity bill, well, that's added to the total. And if I pay into my savings, well, that's added into the total as well. Now you notice this number is not formatted as currency. We'll fix that quickly. Okay. And then finally, we'll add one more piece of data here. This is the amount remaining to be paid. After I paid some of my bills, there will be some that is not yet paid. And let me just give this column more space. So I'll go between A and B to that divider line. I'll just give it a little more space for the names of our bills and our information here. So in this one, we simply want to subtract the first half total from the amount we've already paid, and that's the amount left over that we have to pay. So we will use the function minus for that, and we're using B15 and subtracting it from B16. Close parentheses and enter. Oh, I think I did something wrong. I used a range, so that's a comma instead of a colon now becomes 2 values instead of 1. Hopefully you don't make that same mistake. So now we see 95 minus 95 is 0, but if I did not pay the savings yet, then I still have $20 to pay, and I'll keep that in mind as I make a purchasing decision later in the month. We can see how the math works, and we can see how the checkboxes make it very easy to keep track of what's going on with our budget. So that's the basic form of this simple budget. We can make it a little fancier. We can click and drag and select all of these, and Google Sheets really likes keyboard shortcuts rather than the copy and paste. You can copy out of this edit menu, and I'll copy these cells, but for pasting, for some reason it likes Control V a lot. So I'll click down here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy these and paste them below, and I'll hit Control V to do that. And now this becomes the second half of the month bills. And so I'll just change this to second half. And you notice that these references to cells updated themselves. So in this formula, we referenced cells B12, or excuse me, B2 through B14. But since I moved them down, it keeps the relative value B20 through B32. It updated it for me, and everything still works. Very nice feature of using these type of spreadsheets. With that, you can make modifications. You can add more things. You can add your income to this. You can add things over here, totals for the year. You could copy these over to the infinite space to the right or down and do every month of the year in one spreadsheet, whatever you want to do. For me, I might just use a few colors to format things nicely, to maybe make a positive total green. In fact, I'll show you that. Let's do conditional formatting. Here's the total amount remaining. We'll do format, conditional formatting. And let's say if there is some money left to be paid, I can change the background to yellow. And here's the rule. Format cells if, and we'll say the value is greater than 0. That means there's money that we still have to pay. So it'll show up yellow and make us aware that there's still money out there that we need to provide for these bills. And we can add another rule. If it is 0, if all of our bills are paid, then maybe we'll make it green, which means that we don't have any bills hanging over our head for this period of time. So we'll say the rule, if the cell is equal to 0, meaning all our bills are paid, it turns green. And so here I'm going to pay all my bills, and there it goes. It shows up in green or yellow if there's money to be paid. One last thing, I'm a big fan of sharing information. You can, once you create this spreadsheet, you can share this with your spouse or significant other or someone else that helps plan your finances, and you can teamwork it. And maybe you pay a bill on your mobile app. You can get the Google Sheets mobile app and update these little check boxes, and then you always have a total of what's going on with your bills, when they're due, and other financial goals that you might need. So that's it. I hope this was helpful to you. Please let me know if I can improve anything in the comments, and I'll see you back in the post, and we'll see how we can use this data to keep going with our very simple budgeting system. Thanks again.